They trained staff to pick customers' pockets with a smile, but one of them recorded everything. And the real owner just walked back in, unannounced. The game is ending, and no one saw it coming. Under the scorching midday sun in Cedar Hill, Ohio, an old Toyota Corolla crept slowly into the display lot of Caldwell's trucks. The man behind the wheel, wearing a faded flannel shirt, worn-out jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face, wasn't a stranger. He was Ethan Caldwell, 48-year-old owner of the state's most well-known truck dealership chain, a self-made man who had built this empire with his own two hands over the past 15 years. But today, he wasn't there to sign contracts or meet with the management team. Today, he was Cole Turner, a construction worker looking to trade in his old ride for a brand new F-150. None of the young employees at the original branch recognized him, and that was exactly what Ethan needed. Lately, something hadn't felt right. Sales numbers were up, but online reviews had taken a sharp dive. While some customers praised the vehicles, many complained about hidden fees, contract traps, and aggressive sales tactics. All of it clashed with the ethical foundation Ethan had laid down in the early days of Caldwell's trucks. He stepped out of the car, his gait slightly hunched, face covered in 3 days' stubble. As he made his way into the lot, he spotted Bryce Maddox, the sales manager he had personally promoted a year ago, standing with arms crossed behind the showroom glass. Bryce's hawk-like gaze swept over the lot, searching for his next target. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. "Hey there, I'm Ryan. What can I help you with today?" A young man approached him, wearing a bright smile that felt a little too practiced. Ethan smiled back, roughening his voice just slightly. "Name's Cole. I work construction. My old Corolla's about done for. Looking for something new to haul materials. Budget's around 35 grand. Ryan lit up like he'd struck gold. "You came to the right place. I think I've got just the thing." They strolled past rows of gleaming new trucks as Ryan launched into a rapid-fire tour of features and options. When they stopped in front of a silver Ford F-150, the dealership's top seller, Ryan lowered his voice as if letting Ethan in on a secret. "This one just came in last week. Powerful engine, premium interior, and best of all, it comes with Caldwell's exclusive premium protection package included." Ethan's chest tightened. That package was supposed to be optional, never included in the sticker price. This was the first real sign that the whispers of deception weren't just rumors. "Mind if I take a look under the hood?" he asked, slipping into the role of a mechanic-savvy buyer. While Ryan lifted the hood, Ethan stole a glance toward the glass office. Bryce Maddox was still staring, arms crossed, eyes unblinking. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, with a place that still bore his name. And today, Ethan had come back to see it for himself. Beneath the slanting rays of late afternoon sun, Ethan Caldwell, as Cole Turner, the construction worker, silently followed Ryan back toward the office to start the paperwork process. No one noticed a calm figure in the faded flannel. But beneath that threadbare shirt, Ethan's heart was pounding faster than usual. Ryan tapped on the keyboard, his voice still chipper. "The F-150 you picked is listed at $36,900, but we offer financing, so with just a $5,000 down payment, we can get the paperwork started today." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Didn't you just say the price was $35,000? Ryan froze for half a second, a flicker of uncertainty flashing in his eyes. "Yes, that's the base sticker price. But once you factor in the premium protection package, processing fees, and delivery insurance—" "Hold on," Ethan interrupted, his tone calm but firmer. "What protection package? I didn't agree to anything extra." Ryan swallowed hard. A light flush crept up his neck as his eyes darted toward the glass office, where Bryce Maddox was still watching from a distance, arms crossed. It's usually included by default. Covers the engine, transmission, even the paint job for the first 5 years. I just assumed everyone wanted it." Ethan tilted his head, voice dropping slightly. "The issue is, I never said I did. How can something be added without me requesting it?" Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "It's a new policy since the beginning of the year. Our manager, Mr. Bryce, he instructed us to include it on all vehicles sold. If a customer asks about it, we remove it. Otherwise, it stays. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the nervous flicker behind the young man's eyes. What he just heard confirmed what he suspected. This wasn't a one-off mistake. It was systemic. He drummed his fingers lightly on the wood surface. Ryan, I've worked construction for nearly 20 years. I know contracts. And this kind of add-on without disclosure, it sounded a lot more like a trap than customer service. Ryan looked down, silent. Ethan studied him closely. There was shame there, and a little fear, but not defiance. You new to the job? Ethan asked, softening his tone. Yes, sir. Just about 4 months. But I really need this job, Ryan murmured. Ethan nodded. I get it, but there's something you need to understand. Staying silent in the face of wrongdoing still makes you part of it. Ryan's eyes lowered further. In that moment, he was no longer just a salesman. He was a young man torn between doing what's right and trying to survive. Ethan stood, pretending he needed to grab more paperwork, but his thoughts were elsewhere. What he'd just uncovered wasn't a minor oversight. It was a warning sign a machine deliberately engineered to profit from a misplaced trust, and he was going to dismantle it gear by gear. The door chime echoed softly as a customer stepped into the showroom, his face tense, as if he had arrived already armed with suspicion. Ethan, still in character as coal turner, sat at a table with Ryan but glanced over. The man was Jack Emerson, a utility maintenance worker from a nearby town, his clothes stained with old paint, his hands calloused and weather-worn. He approached the front desk and said loudly, I want to know why my contract from yesterday has nearly $1,000 in market adjustment fees that no one told me about. The salesman at the desk, a guy named Chris, forced a smile. That's just a standard fee, Jack. Everyone pays it. No, not everyone pays it if you don't tell them about it up front, Jack snapped. I drove nearly 90 minutes down here yesterday because I trusted what your website advertised. I'm not an idiot. He tore the contract cleanly in half, laid the pieces on the desk, and walked out of the dealership with his shoulders tight and rigid. No one stopped him. The silence that followed was louder than any confrontation. Like a confession no one wanted to say aloud. Ethan took a slow breath. This time, there was no guessing. He had just witnessed a victim of a classic phantom fee scheme. And he knew this was only the beginning. Less than 10 minutes later, another family entered. A middle-aged man in a uniform shirt embroidered with Frank Miller held a stack of documents tightly in one hand, while his wife and 2 young daughters quietly took a seat in the waiting area. Ethan glanced at the folder and spotted a photo of a Chevy Silverado, the exact model that matched the deposit Frank had made the week before. Frank was led to a signing table, where Wendy Sparks, the head of admin, was already seated. Ethan pretended to skim documents with Ryan, but his eyes remained fixed on the other table. The air grew heavy as Frank's brow furrowed. Wait a second, Frank said, voice cracking. We agreed on $31,900. This says $34,600. What is this? Premium service package? Digital convenience fee? I never agreed to any of this. Wendy leaned back in her chair, offering a shallow, practiced smile. It's a standard package, applied to all customers to ensure post-sale support. You can opt out, but that would forfeit your deposit. Frank looked up, stunned. What? The 48-hour cancellation period has passed. If you don't sign today, we'll have to retain the $5,000 deposit since we can't resell the vehicle under the original terms, Wendy replied smoothly. Ethan clenched his jaw. Frank turned to look at his wife and daughters, his hands shaking. The youngest clutched a stuffed bear, unaware of the weight collapsing on her father. Frank's voice dropped, nearly a whisper. I saved for 2 years for this truck. I need it for work. Wendy simply nudged the contract closer. Then it's in your best interest to sign, Frank. Ethan rose from his chair. He knew this moment, this very moment, was the matchstick against dry leaves, the turning point in the entire plan to expose the truth. And he also knew he wouldn't let another person fall into this merciless cycle without a fight. Ethan walked straight to the table, his voice low but commanding. Excuse me, I can't stay silent any longer. Ms. Wendy, I want you to explain to me, and to Mr. Frank here, Why a hard-working man is being asked to pay an extra $2,700 for charges that were never mentioned in the original agreement. The entire showroom seemed to hold its breath. Ryan froze at the nearby table, while Wendy stiffened, glancing up at Ethan. "I'm sorry, sir, who are you?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He turned to Frank and said gently, "I can help you go over the contract, if you'd like." Frank looked at the stranger in the worn-out work clothes, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Then, as if he had nothing left to lose, he pushed the paperwork across the table. "If you can help me make sense of this mess, I owe you coffee for life." Ethan sat down, his eyes scanning each line. Priority service package, extended protection, enhanced admin fees, all listed, none signed or initialed. A clear picture of a system built on loopholes and silence. "I want to speak with the manager," Ethan said, lifting his head, his voice sharper now, when he forced a tight smile. "I'm the manager on duty." "No, I want to speak with Bryce Maddox." When he took a step back, "He doesn't meet with customers directly. He's busy." "I'll wait." As Wendy turned and walked away, Ryan hesitated, then quietly stepped closer. He lowered his voice. "Mr. Cole, you should know. This happens all the time. It all comes from the top." Ethan glanced at Ryan, his voice still calm but firm. "I know, and I also know you're not okay with it. If there's something you need to say, now's the time. Not for me, for people like Frank." Ryan swallowed hard. "We're told to keep the advertised price low, to hook the customer. Then at signing, all the fees get added. They call it a market adjustment strategy. If any rep refuses to follow or tips off a buyer, they get reassigned to bad shifts or fired." "Has anyone actually been fired?" Ethan asked, eyes narrowing. "Jalen. He's the guy who sold the truck to Mr. Frank last week. He wouldn't play the game. 2 days later, they let him go, said he wasn't performing." Ethan clenched his hand under the table. The truth was surfacing, piece by piece, not just suspicion anymore. "Who's behind all of this?" he asked, even though deep down he already knew the answer. Ryan lowered his voice. "Bryce Maddox. He's the sales manager here. He built this whole model from A to Z when he's just a foot soldier." Ethan nodded slowly, a cold wave rising in his chest. It wasn't just anger that filled him, it was betrayal. His name, his reputation, and the dream he had built from the ground up over nearly 2 decades. All of it was being used to exploit people like Frank Miller. He turned to Ryan again. "Thank you. It's easy to stay quiet in a place like this, but speaking up, that takes guts." Ryan gave a subtle nod, then stepped back toward his desk. Ethan looked at Frank, who was still staring down at the crumpled contract, shoulders sagging. "I promise you," Ethan said quietly, "this won't end here." He walked away from Ryan's desk, storm quietly brewing beneath his flannel shirt. Outwardly, he was still Cole, the soft-spoken construction worker shopping for a truck. But inside, Ethan Caldwell was building his case, piece by piece. In his shirt pocket, a recording app on his phone was running. He didn't just want to catch Bryce Maddox in one shady deal. He wanted to expose the entire machine. Passing by the refreshment counter, Ethan paused when he overheard 2 employees chatting in hushed voices. "Did you see the Frank Miller deal?" the female rep said, her tone a mix of pity and condescension. "Yeah, but come on." He should have read the fine print. "Same with that lady yesterday, signed, then started crying." The guy shrugged. "Just follow Bryce's script. Once it's signed, it's locked." Ethan moved slower, pretending to glance at a promotional board on the wall. His phone picked up every word. Bryce's script, hidden fees, market adjustment. And then, as if on cue, a voice called out from the rear training room. "All sales staff, 10-minute meeting, special session with Mr. Maddox." This was the moment Ethan had been waiting for. He made his way toward the training room, choosing a shadowed corner near the maintenance desk where he could hear clearly without drawing attention. The door to the room was slightly ajar. Inside, Bryce Maddox stood tall in front of a projection screen, laser pointer in hand. His hair slicked back, navy blue suit perfectly pressed. He looked more like a hedge fund manager than someone selling pickup trucks. "Team," Bryce began, his voice slick in practice. Customers don't come here to buy trucks. They come here to buy dreams. Our job is to help them picture that dream, then charge them for every part of it. Laughter echoed through the room. Ethan clenched his hand but kept a massive cold. He couldn't break character. Not yet. He stayed hidden in the shadow of a corner, unseen, watching everything unfold. Don't worry if they don't understand all the fees, Bryce was saying to the room. The key is to keep them focused on emotion, the shine of the paint, the satisfying thud of a closing door, the scent of brand new leather. As for market adjustment fees, enhanced protection, or dynamic warranties, let those just blur past their eyes. A young salesperson raised a hand. What do they catch on? Bryce smirked. The only answer is, I'm sorry. That's required by finance. Blame the system. Blame policy. But never let them rewind. Once they've imagined themselves behind that wheel, they don't turn back. Every word was being recorded. Every line of slick manipulation was another brick in a wall of deceit. Ethan slowly backed away, heart pounding but thoughts sharp. This wasn't a case of a rogue manager or a flawed department. This was a well-oiled, deliberate scam with gears spinning in sync and silence. He glanced through the glass again and saw Bryce in full stride, still preaching with the arrogance of someone who believed he was untouchable. But Ethan knew just one more step and that mask would fall. And when it did, there'd be no more shelter for the man who built his throne on deception. Ethan walked with purpose now, no longer quiet or hesitant. Heading straight for Bryce Maddox's office. His spine was steel. In his pocket, his phone was still recording. This time not for surveillance, but for closure. The door was slightly ajar after the special training. Bryce lounged in a black leather chair behind his desk, casually flipping through a contract. When he saw Ethan, still dressed as Coal Turner, standing in the doorway, his eyes flickered with wary alertness. He still didn't realize the man in front of him was Ethan Caldwell, his boss, and the owner of the entire Caldwell's Trucks empire. Coal Turner, right? Bryce said, flashing half a smile. Heard you're eyeing a Ford F-150. Ryan mentioned you had some questions about the extra fees. Something not sitting right. We heard you had some concerns about a few line items. Bryce continued in a smooth, practiced tone. We're always transparent here. It's just that sometimes customers don't understand the full value of what they're getting. Ethan nodded slowly. What do you mean? Bryce leaned forward, smile still intact. It's like building a house. Not every brick comes with a price tag on it. Some layers, the foundation, the support beams, you don't see them, but they're critical. We just make sure those bricks make it into the contract, so your house or your truck is solid. Ethan scratched his head, feigning confusion. So things like the protection package and special handling fee, those are your bricks? Bryce chuckled, a short sound laced with danger. Exactly. Not everyone sees the big picture. Some folks know how to think long-term. Others, they get hung up counting pennies. Ethan slowly nodded. And if a customer refuses to understand, Bryce folded his arms, his voice dropping into a lower register. Then we guide them. A good salesman doesn't just hand over keys. They lead the way. Sometimes the scenic route is the shortcut. You get me? Probably explains why guys like Ryan always glance at your office before quoting a price. Bryce narrowed his eyes, but didn't deny it. I train my team with a philosophy. If they can't keep up, they get left behind. Like that kid Jalen. Nice guy, too soft. This industry doesn't have room for that. To be honest, Ethan began in a steady voice, I used to work at a small dealership. I know the old tricks. Make the customer think they scored a deal, then slide in the extras. Protection plans, market fees, mandatory surcharges. That playbook's been around forever. Funny thing is, sounds like you're still using it here. Bryce's eyes narrowed. A flicker of caution passed across his face, but pride overrode it quickly. Haha, well, you get it. Bryce said with a chuckle, lowering his voice. This is all psychology. Customers think they're in control, but we're the ones steering. All that matters is making them want the truck. The add-ons? Just the price of chasing a dream. Ethan leaned back in his chair, stroking his chin as if pondering. I don't mind paying more, as long as I'm not the one losing out. He squinted. Long as it benefits me. I don't care what the extras are. Bryce let out a louder laugh and leaned forward, his voice dropping even further. Now we're speaking the same language. Mike, truth is, I built this whole model to maximize profits. The old owner, Caldwell, he was soft. Thought customers needed trust. Honesty? Please. You go soft in this business, you die. Ethan kept his face neutral, his thumb silently tapping the recorder in his pocket. And he doesn't notice? How could he? Bryce sneered. He's busy investing in other states. I run this place. Everything I do is technically legal, signed contract and all. Any lawsuit would just boil down to, he said, she said. I time my deals perfectly. Single dads who need work trucks, retirees with no wiggle room. They're trapped. Ethan straightened up and his eyes turned cold, sharp. So the old man's completely in the dark? Bryce chuckled. Yup. And even if he did find out, what's he gonna do? I brought in the highest revenue 3 years straight. They'll protect me until I decide to walk away, with all the secrets I built here. Then Ethan reached up, slow and deliberate, and removed the old baseball cap from his head. The moment his face was fully revealed, Bryce froze like a statue. Sharp jawline, familiar eyes, the unmistakable presence of the man whose name was on every license plate frame outside. Ethan Caldwell. It seems, Ethan said, voice dropping like a gavel. You've forgotten who actually runs this company. Bryce stumbled back, his face drained of color. You're... Ethan Caldwell, he said, enunciating each word slowly, coldly. And I just recorded your entire confession, clearly in full, including your lines about legal adjustments and targeting the vulnerable. I'm sure my attorney will enjoy those clips immensely. The air in the room froze. Bryce stood paralyzed, trembling. Ethan's gaze never wavered. This moment was the one that would turn the tide, and he held every piece of evidence necessary. Standing in Bryce Maddox's office, Ethan Caldwell no longer wore the disguise of Cole Turner. The old baseball cap was gone, and with it, the illusion. Bryce's jaw hung slack, staring at the man he thought was just another blue-collar customer, now revealed as a founder and owner of Caldwell's Trucks. You're Ethan Caldwell? But I thought... You thought what? Ethan cut him off, voice razor-sharp. That I'd never return? That I'd let you turn my dealership into the state's most polished scam show. Before Bryce could speak, Ethan pressed a small button on his smartwatch. Instantly, Bryce's voice echoed through the room via a tiny Bluetooth speaker placed on the desk. Customers don't know what they need until we make them believe they do. As long as they sign, it's all legal. The old guy was too naive. Trusted people. I turned this place into a gold mine off that foolishness. Ethan looked up, his gaze hard as iron. Should I keep going? Or would you prefer I play the part where you brag about taking kickbacks from the insurance company? He didn't wait for an answer. With phone in hand, Ethan turned and walked out of the office, heading straight for the main showroom floor. His voice rang out, calm but commanding. All staff to the main floor. Right now. Within minutes, nearly 30 employees gathered, some confused, some sensing a storm brewing. The moment their eyes landed on the man in the center of the floor, the whispers began to die. It wasn't just some customer anymore. It was him. I'm Ethan Caldwell, he began. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. And I just discovered that this place, once built on trust, has become a breeding ground for deception, manipulation, and moral decay. He held up his phone. With one tap, Bryce's voice played again for the entire team to hear, boasting about tricking customers, mocking integrity, steamrolling honest employees. Silence. Then Bryce stepped out from his office, and every eye turned to him. Some faces registered disbelief, some burned with anger, and then one woman, Lena from finance, stepped forward. I have the emails and spreadsheets he ordered me to edit to hide the markup fees, Lena said, her voice wavering but steady. I kept them because it felt wrong, but I didn't have the courage to speak up until now. Ethan nodded to her with quiet gratitude. Thank you. Today is the day the truth matters, without fear of losing your job or facing retaliation. Then he turned toward Bryce, who was now edging slowly toward the back exit. "Bryce Maddox," Ethan called out, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "You are officially terminated. Immediately. No severance, no negotiations. Security will escort you off the premises. And I've already called the police. They're on their way." Just as security stepped in, the front door swung open, and in walked Frank Miller, the same man who had nearly been scammed earlier that morning. He clutched a folded complaint form in his callous hand. But when he saw Ethan standing tall, surrounded by employees watching in silence, Frank stopped in his tracks. Ethan stepped toward him, extended his hand firmly. "I owe you an apology, Frank, and a truck at the original price, not a penny more. No hidden fees." Frank blinked, stunned. The tension in his face softened. "Are you serious?" "I am. And more than that, I want to invite you back next week to speak at our relaunch meeting. Not just as someone who was wronged, but as proof that real change starts with real people." Applause broke out, not from the customers, but from the staff. The same employees who had been pressured into silence were now clapping, not just for Frank, but for the moment. Ethan turned back to them, eyes fierce with resolve. "I know some of you were punished for speaking the truth, but that ends today. Now's the time to stand up and help me rebuild, starting now." As Bryce Maddox was escorted off the premises, the air inside the dealership seemed to shift. It was like a toxic fog had finally lifted, replaced with something unspoken but palpable, a sense of hope. Ethan moved to the center of the showroom, this time not as a hidden owner, not as Cole Turner the construction worker, but as the founder, taking full accountability for the institution that bore his name. He picked up a microphone, not to expose lies this time, but to claim responsibility. "Before we talk about the future," he said, voice calm and deliberate, "I need to confront what's already happened." He motioned to a member of the communications team, who tapped a button and brought up a bold red message across the dealership's main display. "All sales temporarily halted." Subtitle: "All current contracts under review. Full refunds for any proven misconduct." "Starting today," Ethan continued, "Caldwell's Trucks is freezing all sales operations at this branch. We're launching a full audit. Every contract, every line item, every cent paid. If anything isn't crystal clear or was added without consent, you'll be fully refunded." A wave of murmurs rippled through the growing crowd. Former customers, neighbors, even those who had long distrusted the dealership. And for the first time in a long time, they weren't met with silence. They were met with truth. Ethan stepped up to Frank Miller, the man still standing there with his complaint form clenched in his hand, though his eyes now carried a gentler look. "Frank," he said, voice low and steady, "I'm sorry for the deception, for the helplessness you were made to feel, and for allowing someone like Bryce Maddox to represent my name." He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope. Inside is a check reimbursing your full $5,000 deposit, plus the $2,700 you were nearly forced to pay. It also includes a free 3-year maintenance package and a special discount on any vehicle you're choosing, if you ever feel like coming back to us. Frank opened the envelope, looked at the amount, then raised his eyes. "I'm not coming back for the truck," he said quietly. "I'm coming back for what's right." Ethan nodded. "So am I." But he wasn't done. Turning back to the crowd of employees and customers, Ethan addressed everyone with clear, unwavering resolve. "This afternoon, we'll open a support station right here in the dealership. Any customer who purchased a vehicle in the last 12 months can bring in their contract. Any hidden fees, any unjust charges will be refunded, publicly, transparently, no loopholes." A staff member from the communications team raised their hand. "Mr. Caldwell, will there be a press conference?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "Yes, a public apology. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., right here. I'll invite the press, news outlets, legal advisors, and every affected customer, not to make excuses, but to restore dignity through transparency." And the next day, under the flash of cameras and in front of a wall of microphones, Ethan Caldwell stood before his community and apologized. not with scripted PR jargon, but with sincerity and with action. But just as the conference was winding down and a faint sense of relief touched Ethan's shoulders, an elderly man in worn gardening clothes stepped into the dealership. In his trembling hands was a crumpled contract. "My daughter says I got tricked," the man said, voice shaky. "They made me sign it, but I couldn't read it all." Ethan stepped off the platform and gently took the paperwork. "Sir, may I ask your name?" Howard Jenkins. "I just want a small truck to carry tools. They made me pay nearly $4,000 extra for something called an urban enhancement package. I live out past the city. I don't even know what that means." The room fell silent. Ethan took Mr. Jenkins' hand. "From today on, Mr. Howard, no one will ever sign anything here again without fully understanding every single word. I'll personally make sure of that." Mr. Jenkins nodded softly, and then the applause came, not for checks or cars or new policies, but for something far rarer, a person in power owning his mistakes and taking action to make them right. The sun cast golden light through the dealership's tall glass windows. The once flashy car banners no longer felt like empty advertisements, but something deeper. A new promise etched itself into the culture of the room. Caldwell's Trucks, where honesty isn't optional, it's standard. 3 days after the public apology, a new sign was installed in front of Caldwell's Trucks. Beneath the company name, bold letters now read, "Transparent pricing, no hidden fees, no pressure." Inside the main office, Ethan Caldwell sat at the head of the conference table, meeting with the dealership's newly restructured core team. Not the manipulators of the past, but individuals who had dared to speak up or walk away from dishonesty. Among them was Ryan, the young salesman who had helped expose the entire scheme. "Ryan," Ethan said, placing a folder on the table, "you and Jalen. He's coming back. I've already reached out. We'll be heading a new division, transparency and sales integrity. You'll have full authority to audit quotes, review policies, and correct any unclear sales processes." Ryan blinked in surprise. "Us? But I'm still new." "Exactly," Ethan replied with a steady nod. "You still carry the integrity. We need to rebuild the foundation. And with Jalen by your side, you won't be alone." The tension in the room gave way to something lighter. Hope. Those like Ryan, once pushed to the fringes for not playing by the rules, were now being placed at the center of reform. But Ethan wasn't stopping at staff changes. He instituted a mandatory training program titled "Sell with Truth, Not with Fear." There, employees learn how to communicate with customers without ambiguity, without pressure, and without psychological manipulation. Digital displays across the showroom now clearly listed every vehicle's price, along with a breakdown of taxes, fees, and optional services. Like a transparent menu at a coffee shop, there were no more processing surcharges, no mandatory protection packages, no market adjustment fees. Customers knew exactly what they were paying for. A new feedback station was placed at the checkout counter with a single question: "Did you feel respected while shopping here today?" Behind the scenes, Ethan quietly initiated a full audit of every Caldwell's Trucks location in the state. He sent out a direct memo to all managers: "If you've made mistakes, this is your chance to make them right. If you continue deceiving customers, prepare for a respectful but permanent goodbye." Under the dealership's new direction, the work environment shifted dramatically. Employees were no longer afraid of losing hours for underperforming sales. They were now rewarded for earning customer trust. That weekend, a single mother returned to the dealership. Months ago, she had been coerced into signing a shady contract. Now, after being refunded and personally apologized to, she brought her young daughter with her. Taking the girl's hand, she approached Ethan and said, "I'm not here to buy a car today. I just wanted my daughter to see that even when people mess up, they can still choose to do the right thing." Ethan looked at the little girl and smiled. "And it's people like your mom who helped us change." Months after the sweeping reform, Caldwell's Trucks wasn't just recovering. It had become a new symbol of principled business across the state of Ohio. Local newspapers dubbed it the rebirth of trust, while the people of Cedar Hill gave the dealership a different name: the place that sells cars and keeps its word. In his newly renovated office, Ethan Caldwell stood before a black and white photograph of his father, a man who had worked as a truck mechanic for 35 years, a man who once dreamed of a place where customers didn't have to brace themselves walking into a showroom. He placed that photo beside a gold-plated plaque that now hung in the main hall. Trust is not a strategy. It's a commitment. Ethan hadn't just rebuilt a company. He reignited the spirit he first laid down 15 years earlier. What began as a modest lot had now expanded to 3 new branches, all operating under a new ethical code designed not just to make money the right way, but to make it by doing what's right. A community fund was born, the Caldwell Trust Initiative, dedicating 3% of quarterly profits to help local families in need, from car repairs to technical scholarships for teens. Every employee was encouraged to take 1 paid workday each month to volunteer in community service. At the grand opening of the Jefferson City branch, Ethan didn't present charts or profit projections. Instead, he told the story of Frank Miller, the moment he realized his business had drifted from the promise it was founded upon. We were once a dealership that cared only about profit, but today, we are part of the community. We don't just sell trucks, we build trustworthy journeys for every family that walks through our doors. The audience of hundreds rose in applause, not because the trucks were shinier, but because they felt they were part of something better. Among the crowd, Ryan, now Director of Transparency, stood with new hires chosen for their values, not just their sales numbers. They were the next generation, carrying the philosophy Ethan had passed down. If you can't look a customer in the eye after signing the deal, then don't sign it. That night, as the lights in the showroom dimmed, Ethan stepped out into the lot. He gazed across the rows of parked trucks, their polished surfaces glinting under the moonlight, and smiled. He knew there would still be challenges ahead, but this time he wasn't alone. Caldwell's Trucks was no longer just a dealership. It was a promise, a mirror, a new standard, built not on contracts, but on honor,